In the last 2 days, the earth flooded. Everyone built a crazy raft together. I was on 2 square meters of broom handles and shelf planks, held together with packing tape and phone chargers. As they were laughing at me, a turtle swam up and asked me to join a pack. Everyone laughed harder at me for talking to a turtle. They couldn't see the system panel I could. To explain the turtle, I have to go back 2 days. 2 days ago, I was mid-game, and unbeknownst to me, the worst global catastrophe in history was starting. Scientists predicted floods 20 feet deep, 2 stories, everywhere. Everyone formed groups in their communities, bringing together food and resources to wait it out. I had no idea it was starting until the water in my apartment was up to my thighs and my computer disconnected. As I was about to crash out, I had to look around and instantly panicked. I built a raft out of anything I could find in my room. 11 minutes of work. That is what I was kneeling on 2 days later, being told whose fault it was. You had the same 2 days we did, same warnings. Where were you? He was right. That was the part I could not argue with. So I accepted the pact. The turtle went hot under my hands, and light ran along every seam. 5 seconds, dinner plate to a meter across. Plates rose out of its back in a ring, banded amber and brown. The raft folded and the sea came up through it. I hauled myself onto the shell. Nobody was laughing. They were standing up. Every raft I could see, people getting to their feet and turning to look at the thing under me. Somebody called across the water. Not a joke this time, a question. What is that? How do you get one? I did not answer. I was reading. Constitution 1.4, Speed 1.2, Strength 1.0. 3 numbers where there had been nothing. That was the first entry. The screen changed. Open water protocol, active. I read it twice. The words did not change. 9.8 billion people were in the water with me. That was the number it gave. Not evacuated, not rescued. In the water. Every person on the planet dropped onto whatever the protocol had decided they deserved. Death was real. It said that plainly. There was no respawn line, no second attempt, and in 3 days it said the sea beast would start eating us. I looked past the screen at the horizon, flat, empty. The sun was somewhere behind a high gray lid of cloud, and I could not tell what time it was. 3 days. 3 days to do what exactly? Build a boat? Learn to fight? It did not say. It did not say. It just gave me the number and left me with it. Body evaluation, 0.3. I stared at that, 0.3. It did not tell me 3 out of what. It did not have to. I have never in my life felt like a whole number, but I had never seen it written down before. Then it gave me my starter pack. 1 liter of water, 200 grams of crackers. That was it. That was the entire allowance for a man in the middle of an ocean. How long does a liter last? A day? If you are careful and it is cool. It was not going to be cool. Bottle appeared against my ribs and I caught it before it rolled. The crackers were in a flat foil sleeve. I held them and I did the arithmetic I did not want to do. 1 liter. In this heat. Against water I could not drink in every direction for as far as I could see. I spent the next hour picking up garbage. Current had gathered a slick of it about a kilometer out. Planks, bottle crates, a tangle of orange cloth that had been somebody's shirt. I steered along the edge of it and leaned out and hooked what I could and dragged it up onto the shell behind me. It felt stupid. I want to be honest about that. There was an ocean full of people fighting for their lives, and I was fishing plastic out of the swell like a man cleaning a pond. I kept doing it anyway. It was the only thing in reach that had any value at all. When the pile behind me was knee-high, I opened the panel and hit awaken. Talent assigned, verdant hand. Verdant hand. Rank S. I actually laughed out loud. S rank. The screen was very pleased with itself about that. Everything I planted would grow at double speed. 3 in every 10 plants would come up mutated into something better than what I put in the ground. I sat on a turtle in the middle of the sea and read that twice. I had no dirt. I had no seeds. I had no pot to put either one in. I had 3 square meters of animal, and the best talent in the game was a farming talent. What do you farm on an ocean? That was the question, and I did not have an answer for it that day. The joke was so precise, it felt personal. I put the screen away and looked at the back of the turtle's head for a while. I had been planning to eat him. That is the truth. Some part of me had been quietly filing him under 200 pounds of meat since the moment the shell hardened. He was the only protein I had that I did not have to catch, but he had been carrying me for an hour and had not once tried to shake me off. Base Chun, I said. He did not react. I said it again anyway, and it stuck, and that was that. He was not dinner anymore. He was my ride, my floor, my house, and the only thing out here that knew I existed. Then I checked his upkeep and my stomach dropped. 100 pounds of meat a day, or 10 energy points, which I did not have either. Every other player in this ocean had a raft that cost them nothing. Mine 8. Was that a bad trade? I did not know yet. A raft does not eat, but a raft also does not grow. I went back to collecting garbage. So, chat was open on a corner of my vision the whole time and it was pure noise. 30 wood, 30 plastic, 20 cloth. That was the requirement to push a starter raft to level 1, and half the server had worked it out at the same time, and every one of them was screaming for the same 3 materials. None of them wanted crystals. I read that line 4 or 5 times before it landed. Crystals came off monsters. Rafts did not need them, so there was going to be an entire ocean of people killing nothing, hoarding lumber, and throwing away the only currency my animal could eat. So what were 10 billion people about to do with every crystal they found? Nothing. Drop it, ignore it, leave it on the seabed. I was not competing with anyone. I was the only customer in a market that did not know it had a product. An hour later, I saw the crate. It was riding low in the water, about 200 meters off, and it had a faint glow bleeding out around the lid, weak but steady, like a coal under ash. I turned Bastion toward it and came alongside and hauled it up onto the shell with both arms. Common tier treasure chest. I got the lid off with the heel of my hand. 3 cans of pork, 2 bottles of water, 10 crystals, small and dull gray, rolling loose in the bottom corner, and a blueprint, single use, a spear. I had 10 wood on the pile behind me. I fed it in, and the blueprint burned itself out in my hands, and the spear was simply there, lying across the shell, a straight shaft with a hammered point. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, and it balanced about a hand's width behind the head. I had food, I had water, I had a weapon, and I had 10 crystals sitting in the bottom of a box, in an ocean where nobody else wanted them. I counted what I owned. 1 spear, 1 turtle, 10 crystals, 3 cans, 2 bottles. No roof, no stove, no bed, no plan past tomorrow. It was not much. It was more than the morning. So it was more than the morning. 10 crystals, 10 energy points. The vehicle upgrade cost 10. I sat there with the numbers lined up and I did not like how neat it was. Everything I had, all of it, into an animal. And if it did nothing, then I was a man with no crystals, no food coming, and a pet that ate 100 pounds a day. I did it anyway. I put them against the shell one at a time and they went in like water into dry sand. No light, no sound. Then I hit upgrade. Base chun inflated. That is the only word for it. The shell came up under me and kept coming, and I went down onto my hands to stay on it. It went out past where my feet had been, out past where I had piled the garbage, and it did not stop until 3 square meters had become 15. Pattern changed while I watched. Brown with blue running through it in slow curls like current drawn onto bone. Tide-bound turtle. Level 1. He could pull the water now. I felt it before I read it. The swell around us bent, just slightly, and we came around into it without him turning. Then the feedback hit me. Constitution 4.7, Speed 4.5, Strength 4.3. It tripled. My hands looked the same. Everything under them did not. I stood up on 15 square meters of moving animal in open water without putting a hand down, and a day ago I could not have stood up in a canoe. And there was a new line under the stats. Cutwater. I did not know what it did. I put my hand out over the side and thought about a cut the way you think about closing a fist. The sea opened. A gash half a meter long tore itself across the surface, walls of water standing up on either side of a clean, dry line, and it held for most of a second before it fell back in on itself with a slap. I stood there with my hand out. Then the sky went white. Not the sky. The screen, every screen, server-wide, the same message in front of 10 billion faces at once. First vehicle upgrade, Village 1, Rowan Vale. Chat detonated. I watched my own name go up the channel at a speed I could not read. Who, how, what did he do? Somebody said it had to be a bug. Somebody else said nobody gets to level 1 on day 1. It is not possible. The wood alone takes 2 days. Nobody guessed the turtle. Not one person. Why would they? They were all looking at boats. A black iron chest dropped onto the shell beside me while I was reading. And then, because the protocol has a sense of humor, my costs updated. 200 pounds of meat a day now, or 20 energy, doubled the same as everything else. The next upgrade was priced at 100 crystals. I had 0. Friend requests started arriving. 4, then 11, then a number I did not bother to read. I blocked all of them. I did not need a friend. I needed 100 crystals, and every one of those names would want to know how I did it. I built the workbench first. Level 1, out of scrap wood, bolted flat to the shell just behind where I slept. Then I opened the black iron chest. Bread, water, 15 crystals, and a blueprint I read 3 times to be sure of. Seawater converter, 200 milliliters of drinking water per hour. I looked out at the ocean, all of it, every direction, all the way to the edge of the world, undrinkable. 200 milliliters an hour. Almost 5 liters a day out of a sea that had been trying to kill every person in it since the moment the protocol opened. I had the glass for it in the scrap. I did not have enough. I found a seller on the board 20 minutes later, sitting on a stack of it, asking 5 bottles of water apiece. I offered one. He told me what he thought of that. I did not answer. I did not counter, I did not explain, I did not tell him I would go elsewhere, because there was no elsewhere and we both knew it. I just left the offer sitting there and went back to sorting scrap. He caved in under 30 seconds. Built the converter on the workbench that afternoon. It was an ugly thing, a glass drum and a coil and a spout, and it ticked while it worked. By nightfall, it had made most of a liter. Out there, a single bottle of water was going for 10 wood and rising. Mine came out of the sea on its own forever. I woke up on day 2 with the whole thing already assembled in my head. Verdant hand, 15 square meters of shell, a machine that made fresh water out of the sea, on its own, forever. Put those 3 in a line and they stopped being a joke. Farmland, actual farmland out here. I pasted out that morning with my heel, a shelter at the back, out of the wind, the workbench where it already was, a bed, eventually, whenever a bed became a thing I could build, and 10 square meters down the middle for crops, an estate, on an animal. I sat down and opened the board and looked at my scrap pile with new eyes. Wood, plastic, cloth, worthless to me. Worthless to me. I could not eat it and I could not plant it. And every single person on this ocean needed 30 of one and 20 of another before they could sleep dry. I listed all of it. Food too, the cans I could spare, a bottle of the converter's water. I priced it in crystals and only crystals. Would anyone actually pay? That was the part I was not sure about. A crystal was worthless to them, but worthless is not the same as free, and a man who has not drunk since yesterday does not argue about the shape of the coin. The first sale went in under a minute. Somebody bought 5 nails worth of wood and paid in gray stones he clearly thought were garbage. He even thanked me. I bought iron nails off the same board for 1 bottle of water, 5 of them. Then I built the rod. Solid wood body, nylon line, a hook with real weight to it, 3 times the size of the bent wire I had been dropping over the side. Fishing rod, level 1. I dropped it in and I got something almost immediately. The line went hard and the rod bent past where I thought it would break, and the whole thing dragged me 2 steps toward the edge. A day ago, that fish takes the rod and my shoulder with it. I was 4 points of strength now. I hauled it up over the rim and it came out of the water thrashing, and I got a look at it. 1/2 meter of gray-green muscle, a jaw that did not close properly because there were too many teeth in it. Small black eyes with nothing behind them at all. Gorfin. It came off the hook and went across the shell at me, and I'd put the spear through it. 1 hit, it stopped moving. 1 crystal, 20 pounds of meat. Then the sky went white again. First sea beast kill, Rowan Vale, server wide. My name, a second time, in front of 10 billion people 8 hours after the first. The chest came down beside me, black iron again. 10 crystals, food, 5 more nails. 37 energy. Chat lost its mind for the second time that day, and I did not read any of it. Bass Chun had his head turned and was watching me work, watching the meat specifically. "You have legs," I said. He kept looking at me. 100 pounds a day, 200 now. That is not coming out of my hands. He gave me the eye roll. I know how that sounds. I know a turtle does not have the face for it. He did it anyway. A slow drop of the lids and a turn of the head away from me, and then he put his neck down into the water and came up with a fish crosswise in his mouth and swallowed it whole. That was the arrangement from then on. He fed himself out of the water he was already swimming through. I killed the things worth crystals. 2 hunters, 1 floor. Was he a pet at that point? I do not think he ever was. A pet takes. A pet takes. He hunted his own food, carried my house, and broke the neck of anything that came at us. What is the word for that? Not pet. Not vehicle either, whatever the system called him. Partner is the closest I ever got, and it still is not right. It changed the shape of the day. I stopped losing hours to his upkeep and started spending them on the rod and the board, and the pile of meat at the back of the shell stopped shrinking every evening and began to grow instead. That is the part nobody in chat understood, then or later. They thought the turtle was a lucky roll. A big pet. What he actually was, from that afternoon on, was the reason I could spend my whole day earning instead of feeding. We found the chest late in the afternoon. It was sitting on a shelf of rock a few meters down, glowing, and coiled on top of it was a sleeping reef beast, a long gray shape with a whiskered face, easily 3 meters, breathing slow. I looked at my spear, then I looked at 400 pounds of armored turtle. Base Chun, I said, go. He went. The beast came awake fast and got its teeth into the front of his shell, and I heard them scrape and skid off and find nothing to bite. Not a scratch, not a mark. Bastian just leaned into it and closed his jaws on the back of its neck and shook once, and it stopped. The kill credited to me, all of it. Crystals, 30 pounds of meat, and the chest, still glowing, sitting there for me to pick up like a coin off a table. I looked at the body drifting down, and I thought about the thing that had almost killed me 24 hours ago, which was a raft. By late afternoon, the board had turned. Dwight Prives, Egaching Prives of the same people who had called me a scalper that morning were buying everything I put up. Not haggling, not asking, just taking it at my price, in the currency I had chosen. I watched a man pay 4 crystals for a bottle of water after telling me at noon that one was robbery. What changed? Nothing changed. He just got thirsty. My energy went from 23 to 37 while I sat there. Then somebody posted the level 2 boat requirements in chat, and I read them properly, and I had to put the screen down for a second. Wood, cloth, rope, iron. No crystals. Not one anywhere in the list. There was no point in the entire raft progression where a normal player needed the thing I needed. 10 billion people were going to spend a week hunting lumber and stepping over crystals, and every single one of them would sell me theirs for a drink. I was not in a race. I was in a shop, and I was the only one holding money that mattered. Sunset on day 1, and I took stock. Body at 4.5. 37 energy against the 100 I needed for level 2. 50 pounds of fish meat stacked at the back. A converter ticking, a spear, a turtle, and no pot, no stove, no roof, no bed. I ate crackers again and drank warm water and lay flat on the shell, and the temperature dropped, and I did not have a blanket. Rich in crystals. Sleeping outside. Is that progress? I lay there a while and turned it over. Yesterday I had a raft that was actively sinking and a body the system rated at 3/10 of a person. Tonight I had a floor that could not sink, a weapon, and water forever. Yes, it was progress. It just did not feel like it at 2 in the morning with wet clothes on. I cast a line into the dark, mostly to have something to do, and when I looked down, the whole seabed was lit. Eyes is dozens of them, pale and round, spread out under us in every direction as far as the light went. A city of them. Jet was screaming. Somebody was crying out loud on an open channel. People were pulling their lines in and lying flat and telling each other not to move. I sat up and looked at all those eyes and did the only piece of arithmetic that mattered. 3 days. The beasts start eating on day 3. This was day 1, which meant that every one of those animals down there right now was a target that could not fight back. Not a monster. A stack of loot with a heartbeat and a clock on it. How long was I going to get this? 2 days. Maybe less. I stood up on Base Chun's head with the spear. The first one did not react when I hit it. Neither did the second. I put the point through a gorfin and it died, and the one beside it kept drifting exactly where it was, close enough to touch, entirely unbothered by the fact that its neighbor had just been killed. 1 crystal, 20 pounds, again. I worked down the line like a man picking fruit. An hour in, my arms were shaking and the pile behind me had stopped looking like food and started looking like currency. 200 pounds, 3. I lost count somewhere and kept going anyway because the clock on this was not mine to set. How many people on this ocean were doing the same thing tonight? None of them. Every one of them was lying flat on a raft in the dark, holding still, waiting for the eyes to go away. Somewhere past midnight, I found the black iron chest. I was sitting in the open with 5 sea beasts ringed around it, and these ones were awake, and they turned when we came in. I did not slow down. Straight through, I said, and Bastion put his head down and went. He hit the first one square, and it went over sideways. I took the second with the spear on the way past. The third came up on my offside, and I cut it in half with the water. One flat gesture, the sea standing open for half a second, the animal in 2 pieces before it fell back in. 10 minutes, all 5. I checked myself over afterward out of habit, and there was nothing to check. Not a scratch, not a bruise. I'd gone into a ring of 5 sea monsters at 4 in the morning on day 1 and come out clean. The chest had rice seeds in it. Rice seeds, crystals, soil, and a blueprint for a permanent flower pot that added 10% to growth. 10% on top of verdant hands double. I sat down on the shell with the seeds in my hand and worked it out. 5 days for a rice crop, normally. With the talent, 2.5. With the pot, faster still. 2 days, maybe 3. Food that made more food on a floor that kept getting bigger. That was the whole shape of it. Kill things, feed the turtle, get more floor. Plant the floor, sell the food, buy more seed. Every loop fed the next one. Nothing I did was wasted. By the time the sky went gray, I had 50 crystals and 500 pounds of meat. Fed all of it in. The crystals went first, one after another, and the meat after that, and the number climbed while I watched it. 60, 80, 94, 107. Bubble 2 cost 100. I walked out to the middle of the shell and put my palm flat on it and hit upgrade. Bastion detonated. The whole floor bucked and I went down on one knee and the shell just kept going out from under me. 15 meters became 20, then 30, and it did not stop. Water sheeted off the edges in every direction. The sound of it was like a building settling. 50 square meters. The pattern came in while it grew, brown and blue, turning through each other in slow spirals, the current marks of a proper tide-bound animal. And at the rim, where there had been a clean edge, the shell curled. It came up and over into a low wall with a lip on it all the way around like a railing that had grown there. He had made me a floor with sides. Do you know what a wall is worth out here? I had spent 2 nights getting soaked every time the swell came up. Nobody on this ocean had a wall. They had a plank and a grip and whatever they could tie themselves to. Then it hit me. Every stat past 10. All of them at once. All of them at once. I went to stand and put too much into it and left the shell entirely, 3 meters straight up, arms out, an absolutely ridiculous thing to do by accident, and came down hard enough to feel it in my knees. And there was a new line, earth control. Soil and rock. I could feel them, the way you feel a hand behind your back in the dark. I stood there on 50 square meters of living island holding a power over dirt in the middle of an ocean with no dirt. The protocol has a sense of humor. I have said that before. It keeps proving it. The bronze chest was waiting when I turned around. A pet egg, random functional pet, 12 hours to hatch. 10 E-rank crystals. A barbecue grill blueprint, more soil. I set the egg in the warm patch behind the workbench and started the clock on it. Then I read the grill blueprint and put it down again. Iron bars, stone blocks. I had neither, and there was nowhere on this ocean either one came from. I absorbed the E-rank crystals instead. 10 points each, better than the gray ones by a factor of 10. 110 energy. And then the upkeep updated the way it always did, one beat after the good news. 500 pounds of meat a day, or 50 energy. 50 every day, just to keep him. I did the maths on that and did not enjoy it. My entire haul from the best night I had ever had was 110. 2 days of upkeep, that was it. That was what a record-breaking night bought me. The animal that made me rich was going to eat me if I ever stopped moving. Is that a trap? I turned it over for a while. Bastion surfaced 20 meters out with a fish across his jaws and swallowed it without breaking stroke. It looks like a trap. It is not. He came back alongside and I put a hand on the shell and felt the whole animal working underneath it. A cost that scales with the thing producing the value is rent, not a trap. The trap would be owning something that eats and makes nothing. That is what a raft is. Dawn, I searched the board for iron bars. 0 listings. I searched again with the filters off. Still 0. I searched a third time, which is not a rational thing to do, and got the same answer. Nobody had iron. Nobody was mining it, because nobody was standing on anything solid. There was no rock in this world. There was water, and there were rafts, and rafts do not come with a quarry. No iron meant no level 2 workbench. I closed the board. I looked at the bench I did have. Scrap wood, lashed down, already at its ceiling. No stove, no pot, no kitchen, nothing between me and raw fish and crackers for the rest of my life. I had 110 energy points, and I could not buy a nail. And that is the thing about a wall of that kind. It is not a price problem. You cannot outbid a shortage. There was no number I could put on the board that would make iron appear on an ocean that did not contain any. So what breaks it? Not money, land. Somewhere out there had to be rock, and until I found it, I was capped. I filed that thought and did not act on it for another day. It turned out to be the most important thing I worked out all week. So I built what I could build. 5 flower pots out of scrap and the soil from the chest, lined up along the wall where the light was best. I was about to fill the first one when I stopped. I put my palm flat on the shell instead, the way I had for the upgrade, and reached for the soil with the new power and pushed. It went in. Not into the pot, into the shell. The grain of it opened and took the dirt down into itself and held it there level and dark and waiting, exactly like ground. I stood up and looked at the pots. Then I took all 5 of them apart. I spread every scrap of soil I owned straight across Basechun's back, 10 square meters of it, dark and even, from the wall to the workbench. I did not need a pot. I had never needed a pot. I had a field. I knelt down at the edge of the soil with the rice seeds in my palm and my hands took over. That is the only way I can describe it. I have never farmed anything. I did not know how deep rice goes, or how far apart, or which way up. My hands did. They opened the ground with 2 fingers, set the seed, closed it, moved on, at a spacing I could not have measured and did not have to. 10 plants in a row, dead straight. I sat back on my heels and looked at them. Green shoots on the back of a turtle, in the middle of an ocean. Then I watered them, and the whole thing nearly fell over. I emptied the converter's tank. Then the bottle I was saving. Then the second bottle, the one I had told myself twice was not for drinking. I asked her to all the one. 10 square meters of crops was going to want that every single day, and my machine made 2 liters in 24 hours. I stood there holding an empty bottle and did the sum that mattered. 2 liters in, 10 square meters out. How long until the field kills me? Not long. A week if I stop drinking entirely, which is not a plan. The talent that was going to make me rich needed more water than the ocean would give me. Then the egg cracked. I had forgotten it entirely. It had been sitting in the warm patch behind the workbench for 12 hours, and it split down the side while I was standing there feeling sorry for myself, and what came out was not what I expected. A fish. A small one, no longer than my hand, and completely transparent. I could see the shell through her. Her scales caught the light and threw it back apart, pink and pale blue and a thin edge of rainbow along the flank when she turned. Prism carp. She made fresh water, 1 liter a day. 1 liter. I had just poured 4 onto 10 plants. I almost laughed. It was the 3rd time in 2 days the protocol had handed me something enormous with a hole in the bottom. But I had the gold-bordered screen, the old one. I put my hand against the tank and offered her the same contract I had offered, a soft-shell turtle on a sinking raft. She took it, the bond came up warm, exactly like Basechun's, and the number moved. 10 times. The contract multiplied her by 10 on its own. Then I spent energy and pushed her to level 1. She grew, not much, a hand and a half now, and the output line rewrote itself while I watched. 100 liters per day for 10 pounds of meat. I sat down on the shell next to her tank and put my head in my hands and stayed there for a second. 100 liters a day out of a fish on an ocean where a single bottle was going for 4 crystals and climbing. The field was safe. The field was more than safe. And the contract gave me something else. Water shield. I put my hand up and it formed. A disc of turning water on my forearm about the width of my shoulders. I hit it with my other fist to see what it was made of, and it did not splash. It gave, and then it pushed back, solid and springy, like hitting a full sail. Cut water to cut, earth to lift. And now something to hide behind. 3 powers. Where did any of them come from? Not from training, not from a skill tree. Every single one arrived because I bonded something living and let it change me. The turtle gave me a floor and a body. The fish gave me a shield. Nobody else on this ocean was collecting creatures. They were collecting planks. I was sitting there testing it when the chat channel went loud. Somebody was selling iron bars. I want to explain what that sentence meant on day 3. Nobody had iron. There was no iron. There was no iron. The board had shown 0 listings for 2 straight days, and the entire crafting tree above a wooden bench was locked behind it for every player alive. The seller's name was Salt Wake, and the channel came apart on top of him. People were bidding food, water, whole days of rations for a single bar. I opened a private line to him instead of shouting into that. I did not ask his price. I asked where he got it. He told me he was pleased with himself and he wanted somebody to be impressed, and the answer was one word. An island. Rock, he said, or lying on the ground. More than a man could carry. I sat very still, because he was thinking about iron. He had found a hardware store and he was telling the whole ocean about the nails. An island is not iron. An island is rock and ore and stone and dirt. Acres of it, real ground going down under everything. I had earth control and a farming talent and 40 square meters of unused animal, and there was land out there. Salt Wake was still typing. He wanted me to know the island was dangerous. Monsters on it, he said. Fast ones in the trees. They had come close to killing him, and he had gone back to the water with what he could carry and no intention of returning. He meant it as a warning. He was being decent about it, in his way. I read it twice and felt something go quiet and level in my chest. Because what is a monster to me? I had killed 5 in a ring at 4 in the morning without taking a scratch. I had stood in open water with 3 stats over 10 while a sleeping reef beast broke its teeth on my turtle. He was describing a place with free ore, free stone, free dirt, and a guard on the door. That is not a warning. That is a description of somewhere nobody else is gonna go. I asked his price for the bars. He named a number and I did not take it. I offered 500 milliliters of water per bar. Half a bottle. He accepted so fast the message overlapped mine. I bought 10. He was ahead. Half a liter of drinking water on day 3 was worth more than iron to a man who could not make either. And I was ahead, because I had a fish that made 100 liters a day and he did not know that. We both walked away happy. That is the only kind of trade worth making twice. I fed all 10 bars into the workbench. It rebuilt itself. Metal grew up through the wood, gears turned over inside a frame that had been scrapped that morning, and a whole second menu opened that I had never been able to see. Level 2. I went down the list and stopped near the top. Simple wooden house. Wood, plastic, cloth. Nothing else. No iron, no stone. Just the 3 things I had been hauling out of the sea since the first hour and had a mountain of behind the cabin site. I had been sleeping in the open for 3 nights on a pile of somebody else's garbage, and the recipe for a roof had been sitting 1 workbench tier away the entire time. I built it. 10 seconds. It came up out of the shell like a tent opening, walls first, then a roof, then a door that swung and latched. A real door. I stood in the doorway of a wooden house on the back of a turtle and did not go inside for nearly a minute. Then I furnished it. A bed, a table, a cabinet against the far wall. I walked out and turned around and looked at the whole thing at once. A cabin, a workbench with gears in it, a converter ticking away by the wall, storage chests, 3 of them full, and 10 square meters of rice paddy with green coming up in rows. On an animal, in the middle of the ocean, on day 3, somewhere out there, 100,000 people were arguing about whether they had enough cloth for a level 1 raft. I walked the whole thing once before dark. A door, a bed, a table, a field, walls that came up past my knee. 4 days ago, I had sticks and a rope. The last thing I wanted was cooked food. I had eaten crackers, raw fish, and cold canned pork for 3 days, and I was starting to dread meals. I went back to the board and traded for stone blocks. Cheap, nobody wanted them either, and built a grill. An iron rack over a slot for firewood, 3 pieces at a time. I put a cut of sea beast on it, and the smell came up off the metal, and I had to sit down. I ate it standing over the grill like an animal. It restored stamina. It also, the screen informed me, permanently raised body stats. Permanently. I checked mine and nothing moved because I was already past 10 across the board and this was F-rank meat. For me, it did nothing. I stood there with the second piece halfway to my mouth and I stopped. For me, it did nothing. What about for everybody else? 100,000 people on this ocean, every one of them sitting somewhere between 1 and 3. Every one of them eating raw fish and crackers and losing a little more of themselves every day. And I had a grill, an unlimited supply of meat, and a turtle that hunted while I slept. I listed the first batch at a price I thought was rude. It sold out in seconds, not minutes, seconds. I put up a second batch, higher, gone. A third, higher again, gone before I had closed the window. Then somebody ate theirs and posted the screenshot, and the channel turned into a riot. Constitution .01, permanent. That was the number. 1/10 of a point, forever, off a single piece of grilled meat. It sounds like nothing. On day 3, when the average body in that village was sitting somewhere around 1, a tenth of a point was the difference between drowning and not. And I was the only person on the ocean who could cook. The crystals came in so fast I stopped reading the individual sales. People were buying 6 at a time. People were buying for friends. Somebody offered me a level 2 raft, outright for a standing order. 100,000 players in that starter village, and by the end of the afternoon, a meaningful share of them knew my name, not as the man who upgraded first, but as the man who sold hot food. The first restaurant of the apocalypse, on a turtle. My single grill could not keep up. It cooked 3 pieces every batch, and I had a queue that would not clear. That is when Windrow messaged me. He had a blueprint. Permanent, excellent grade, auto-feeding barbecue. He wanted 30 pieces of grilled meat for it. I offered 20. He took 20. He took it quickly enough that I knew I could have gone lower, and I let that go because I was making 30 back every 10 minutes. Then the blueprint landed in my inventory and I read the material list, which, and this is the part that stung, I could not see until after the trade closed. 10 iron bars, fine. 30 stone blocks, fine. 5 copper bars. I went to the board, I searched copper, I searched it again with every filter off. Nothing. Not a listing, not a mention, not one person in 100,000 who had ever seen any. Copper did not exist in this world. I had paid 20 pieces of prime grilled meat for a recipe I could not build. Was I angry? Not really. I filed it, kept it, and went back to work, because a blueprint does not expire, and the world had already surprised me twice in 3 days. Then Base Chun rumbled. I felt it come up through the shell and through the bond, low and interested, a sound he had not made before. At the same moment, my own earth sense caught something, level 2 now, and reaching further than it had any right to. Not seabed, not rock scattered on a bottom, a mass, solid, layered, going down, land, ahead of us. Bastion accelerated without being asked. The wake came up white on both sides and the wind actually pulled at my shirt, and 30 minutes later it came up over the horizon. Gray rock, a green crown of trees, a pale line of surf around the whole thing. An island. I went up the beach with the spear and got about 40 meters before the bushes came apart. 3 of them. Low, fast, gray-brown, wolves in every way that mattered. They split around me without slowing, one left, one right, one straight in. F-rank rock wolf. The one in front got the spear through the neck before it finished its jump. The other 2 hit my shield from both sides at once. It held, that springy give and shove. Both animals bounced off a disc of turning water. I put the point through the first one while it was still off balance. I took the second on the backswing. 10 seconds, maybe less. 3 crystals, 60 pounds of meat, 6 furs. I stood in the quiet with my heart going and understood something. On the water, I was strong. On land, with a shield and a blade and 3 stats over 10, I was not the thing that should be afraid. Then I knelt down, put both palms flat on real ground for the first time since the world ended, and pushed. The island lit up under me. Not with light, with shape. It came back the way sound comes back in a dark room, gray masses of stone in layers, veins of something denser threading through them, and scattered all through the near ground, small yellow points. I dug one out with my hands. Copper. Raw copper ore sitting in the dirt of an island the whole server thought was a rumor. I started carrying rocks. I did it for 5 solid minutes, down to the water, up the beach, arms full, back again, before the light changed behind me. I turned around. Bastion was glowing, and every rock I had not yet reached, every block of ore across 40 meters of beach, was in the air. They floated up in a slow wave and drifted past me and stacked themselves on his back in tidy rows. He watched me the entire time. "How long," I said, "have you been able to do that?" He put his head down and kept loading. We stripped that island in a morning. Over 100 blocks of iron ore, a dozen of copper. Stone in quantities I stopped counting, floating up off the beach in slow columns and settling onto Base Chun's back in stacks. He could move rock. He could move ore. He could not move wood. I found that out trying to get a fallen trunk up the beach, and he looked at it and nothing happened, and I hauled it myself. Everything mineral came to him. That was the rule, and it was enough. Then I went inland, and I found the clearing. It sat in a ring of trees, maybe 60 meters across, and the ground in it was black, not brown, black and soft and deep, the kind of soil you get where a forest has been dying and rotting into itself for a very long time. I put my hands into it up to the wrist. Then I called Baschun, and Baschun took it. The whole top layer lifted at once. It came up as a single sheet, hung there shedding roots, and went over the trees toward the water in a slow, dark cloud. My farm went from 10 square meters to 40. 4 times the field in about 90 seconds for free. Do you know what that would have cost me in soil off the board? Nothing, because nobody sells soil. There is no soil. There is water and there are rafts. I had just taken a forest floor off an island with an animal. I was standing in the emptied clearing feeling extremely pleased with myself when I saw the tree. It was off to one side, alone, and it was glowing. Not brightly, a low, steady gold green coming off fruit hanging all through the branches, red fruit, 40 or 50 of them, and the light pooled on the ground underneath it. There was a bronze chest at the roots, and there was a wolf standing over the chest. It was silver, that was the first thing, not gray-brown like the three on the beach. Silver, dense and bright, darker stripe down the spine, and plates of gray stone grown into its shoulders and chest and down the front legs, like armor that had come up out of the animal itself, twice the size of the others, easily. Its eyes were gold and they were already on me. E rank, Stone Wolf Sovereign. E rank, a full tier above anything I had fought, a full tier above me, on paper. Should I have walked away? Probably. I had 4 square meters of ore on the shell, and a farm 4 times bigger than it had been that morning. The day was already won, but there was a chest under that tree, and the tree was glowing. I opened with a cutwater. I have to be honest about how that went. It was the fastest thing I had. It crossed 30 meters in under a second, and the Sovereign stepped out of the way of it. Not dodged, stepped, like a man moving out of a doorway. I tore a chunk of ground up with earth control and threw it, and it swatted the rock out of the air with one foreleg without taking its eyes off me. So it was faster than me and stronger than me, and it knew it. I charged anyway. That was a mistake, and it cost me the spear. It came in under my thrust, caught the shaft crosswise in its jaws, and bit down, and my weapon came apart into 2 pieces of firewood. I was standing in front of an E-rank predator with nothing in my hands. So I hit it. Full strength, no technique at all, straight down onto the nose, and the whole animal staggered. It went sideways 2 steps and shook its head, and there was a moment, maybe half a second, where it looked at me differently. That was the moment I understood the fight. It shook its head. It backed off a step. Its shoulder dropped, and I saw where it meant to come from next. The tear was a lie. Not a lie, a label. I brought the shield around to meet the shoulder that had dropped. I had been reading E rank as above me, but I was not an F rank player anymore. Claws came in and skidded off the water, and I felt almost nothing through my arm. Rank tells you what an animal is. It does not tell you what I am. Okay, how many people out here were going to die because a letter told them not to try? The Sovereign circled left, and I turned with it, keeping the tree at my back. Most of them, I think? The system labels everything. FED. It came in again, and I let the shield take it and felt the whole weight of the animal go into my forearm and stop. Every player reads their own label first and decides what they are allowed to fight. I stopped charging. Shield in the left. Cutwater in the right. I let it come to me. It came 4 times, and 4 times the shield turned it. That solid, springy shove, claws skidding off water that would not break, and every time it landed, I cut. The 5th pass, I got underneath it and opened a gash 1/2 meter long across its back. It broke. It turned and ran for the tree line, and I put 3 blades into it while it went, and the 3rd one dropped it. Silence in the clearing. The tree still glowing. Me standing there with half a spear at my feet, breathing hard, entirely intact. An E-rank crystal, 50 pounds of E-rank meat, 1 E-rank fur, and then the sky went white for the 4th time in 3 days. First E-rank beast kill, Rowan Vale, 400 names deep in the water broadcast, and mine was at the top of it again. A silver chest came down through the trees and landed in the grass beside me. Down in the channel, the arguing had stopped being about whether I was cheating. It had moved on to what I was. Somebody had started a list of everything I had done first. Somebody else was insisting there were 3 of us sharing one account because no single player could be first at vehicles and first at sea beasts and first at E rank in 72 hours. I read about 10 lines of it, closed the channel, and went to look at my tree. The tree was called lantern wood, and the fruit did 2 things. It healed. It healed. Cuts, breaks, the deep ache you get from 3 days of not sleeping properly. 1 fruit, and it was gone. And it raised strength, permanently. I stood under it, working out what 40 fruit were worth on a board where a bottle of water went for 4 crystals, and then I read the last line of the description and stopped calculating. Replantable. Not the fruit, the tree. The whole tree, root ball and all, could be lifted and put down somewhere else, and it would keep growing. How many things in this world could you actually move? Or, once you dug it, perhaps soil, if you had the power. Nothing that was alive. I called Bastian up the beach. He took it out of the ground whole. The soil bulged, the roots came free in one mass, and the entire tree went over the tree line, glowing like a lamp being carried through a dark house. I planted it beside my cabin. That is when the arrow hit me. I did not hear him. There was no shout, no demand, no line of dialogue. A man stepped out of the trees about 20 meters off with a bow already drawn and put a shaft at my back while I was kneeling in the dirt with my hands full of roots. The arrow curved in the air. I saw it happen out of the corner of my eye. It came off the string straight and then bent, mid-flight, hunting me. Some kind of homing talent. It struck my shield and stuck there, shaft trembling, half a meter from my spine. The shield had been up the whole time. I had stopped thinking about it. It had been on my arm since the wolf and I had simply never dropped it. I killed him with 2 cutwaters. I want to be careful about how I say this next part because it would be easy to make it sound like nothing. It was not nothing. Everything I had killed until that moment had been an animal. This was a man. He had a name over his head and a backpack with his things in it, and about 4 seconds earlier he had been alive and had decided, on seeing me, that the correct move was to shoot me in the back and take my turtle. He was wrong about how that would go. That does not make it easy to stand over him afterwards. Was it justified? Yes. I know it was. He shot first, and if that shield had been down, I would be the one lying in the sand. I still sat down for a minute. Then I went through his backpack because the ocean does not care how I felt about it. Crystals, junk, a ration bar, vast and a blueprint, permanent, excellent grade, furnace. I read it 3 times. A furnace smelts ore into bars, iron ore into iron bars, copper ore into copper bars. I had over 100 blocks of iron ore on Base Chun's back, a dozen of copper beside them. I had been staring at all of it for a day and a half as raw rock, and the recipe to turn it into the scarcest resource in the world had been in the bag of a man who tried to murder me for a turtle. I did not go back to the island for anything else. There was nothing else on it I needed. On the way home, I opened the bronze chest. Seeds, tomato, potato, watermelon, 10 E-rank crystals, a stack of fireproof bricks that I did not understand the value of until about an hour later. Then the silver one, 20 copper bars, 20 iron bars, 5 D-rank crystals, which were a tier above anything I had ever absorbed, and a device about the size of a bucket, automatic collector, 3-meter radius. I set it at the rim and hooked it to a storage chest. The half. It started pulling debris out of the water on its own. Wood, plastic, cloth. Everything I had spent 2 days scooping up by hand with my shoulder in the sea. I never picked up a piece of garbage by hand again. I built the furnace behind the cabin out of the dead man's blueprint and the chest's fireproof bricks. Excellent grade meant 5 slots. 5, running at once. I loaded all 5 and stood back and watched raw island rock go in one side and come out the other as clean bars, stacked and counted. Down in the channel, people were still trading a bar for half a bottle of water. A few had built ordinary furnaces by then, 1 slot, and they could not process copper at all because the recipe did not admit copper existed. Mine did 5 at a time and did not care which. I let it run all night. In the morning, I had iron and copper in quantity, and I built the thing I had been scammed into buying. Day, Windrose Grill, auto feeding, 10 pieces per batch, 15 minutes a batch, no hands. I set it next to the old one and started both. He had sold me a recipe for a world that did not have copper in it. 4 days later, I was the world, and it did. I stopped work in the middle of the afternoon and actually looked at what I was standing on. The furnace was running 5 slots behind the cabin, smoke going up in a thin line. Both grills were going, the old one in windrows, 10 pieces turning over every 15 minutes with nobody touching them. The collector was hauling debris up out of the swell at the rim and dropping it into a chest. 40 square meters of dark soil with rows coming up green. A lantern wood tree throwing gold-green light across all of it. A house with a door. None of it needed me, not one piece. It was a factory. It ran on its own, and it was standing on a living animal that was swimming east at a steady walking pace while it worked. How does a man get from a sinking raft to this in 4 days? He does not by working harder. Everyone out there was working as hard as me, and most of them were still arguing about cloth. He gets there because every single thing he owns makes the next thing cheaper. That was the whole trick. I had not been building a base. I had been building a machine that builds bases. Then the fish stopped being enough. 40 square meters of crops drank more than 10 had. The lantern wood was thirstier than all of it put together. A glowing tree pulls hard. 100 liters a day had gone from luxurious to tight in about a day and a half. I had 50 energy points spare. I spent all of them on her. She went to level 2 in the tank and immediately did not fit in it. She came up to nearly a meter, long and heavy through the body, the opal running deeper along her flanks and throwing that thin rainbow edge across the whole shell every time the sun caught her. 1,000 liters. Per day. 1,000. The field would never be thirsty again. The tree would never be thirsty again. I could water everything twice a day and pour the rest into the sea for fun, and out there people were still bidding 4 crystals a bottle. Water scarcity for me simply ended. It never came back. Think about what that sentence would have meant on day 1. I drank warm water out of a bottle and counted the mouthfuls. 4 days. That is all it took to go from rationing to waste. She turned once in the tank and the light came apart across her flank in a thin band of color. The upgrade fed me too. Everything past 11 now, across the board, and the shield changed. It came up on my arm at twice the density, a deeper blue with a shimmer moving through it, and when I hit it to test it, it barely gave it all. Then I had to solve the fish. She was a meter long, in a tank built for something the size of my hand, and she was miserable in it, and I could feel that through the bond as clearly as I could feel Bastian's moods. So I built her a pond. Earth control, stone and soil, right into the shell, 4 square meters walled, a proper basin with a sloped side and depth enough for her to turn in. I filled it and she went in, and what came back up the bond was so uncomplicatedly happy that I sat on the edge of it and laughed out loud on an empty ocean. Then I dealt with the waves. The rim wall base chun had grown at 50 square meters was half the problem solved. Swell still came over it in weather, and salt water on a rice paddy is not a thing you let happen twice. I walked the entire perimeter with both hands out and stacked stone, half a meter high, all the way around, sealed to the shell. It took nearly everything I had brought back from the island, and I did not care. When it was done, I stood at the front edge and looked back down the length of it. It was not a raft with things on it. It was not even a base. What do you call this? I did not have a word for it yet. I did not have a word for it. A walled platform in open water, a house, a farm, a pond, a factory, all of it inside the wall. The word came to me 2 days later and it was the right one. I was in a mood by then and I did something petty. I cut a single piece of E-rank grilled meat in half, and I listed it on the open board for 10 crystals, which was an insulting price, roughly 10 times what anything on that board had ever sold for. I did it to see what would happen. It sold in under 60 seconds. The buyer was called Clementine, and she paid without a word of complaint, and then she followed my profile. I sat looking at that for a while. Somebody out there had just paid 10 crystals for half a piece of meat and thanked me for the opportunity. Was there a ceiling on this? I had assumed there was. I had assumed at some point people would stop paying. I stopped assuming that. Night came and the eyes came back with it, spread out across the seabed under us in their hundreds. The last time I had seen that I had been standing on Base Chun's head with a spear working carefully, one at a time. I did not need the spear anymore. I went to the rim and cut, and the water opened, and an F-rank beast came apart in 2 pieces below the surface without me touching it. Then another. Bastion went down under them and came up through the middle of a cluster like a boulder rolling uphill, and the ones he did not break scattered into the range of my hands. We cleared the whole shoal in under an hour. I went to bed in a house, on a bed behind a wall. At midnight, I sat down on the wall and counted everything. Kills off the shoal, the chest hauls, 2 days of a restaurant that never closed, and a water supply nobody could compete with. 612 energy points. I closed the panel and opened it again to be sure the number had not moved. Level 3 cost 500. The wind came across the wall. I sat there with 112 to spare. Behind me, the grills ticked over. The last two upgrades had each roughly doubled my world. I had no idea what a third would do. What is the ceiling on an animal? Nobody had ever taken a vehicle to level 3. There was no one to ask. I walked out to the middle of the shell, put my palm down, and triggered it. Bass Chun did not grow this time. He detonated. The floor kicked and I went flat and stayed flat because standing was not on offer. The whole shell quaked and kept quaking, and the edges tore away from me in every direction, out and out and out, and the sound of it was a low grinding roar like a quarry coming apart. 50 square meters became 200, bigger than a basketball court. I lay in the middle of it with my cheek against the shell, and I could not see the far rim properly in the dark, and the color changed. The brown and blue burned out of it from the center in a slow wave, and what came up underneath was black, deep black, with gold running through the seams, thick and hard, less like a shell now than like worked stone. The rim did not stay a rim. It came up, all the way around. The edge of him rose into a proper wall, chest high, and then it notched itself. Square gaps cut along the top at even spacing, and heavier blocks standing at the corners. Ramparts. He had grown ramparts. I got up onto my knees in the middle of 200 square meters of black gold fortress and looked down the length of a battlement that an animal had grown out of his own back, and I laughed until it turned into something else. I had woken up 4 days ago on 2 square meters of sticks. Then the feedback hit me and put me straight back down. Constitution 32, speed 31, strength 32. Tripled again. I stood up too fast and jumped the way I had at 10, expecting 3 meters. I went 6. Came down in the middle of the deck hard enough to shake the whole platform and stagger myself. Classification, transcendent, mid-rank. I did not know that tier existed. 4 days earlier, the system had rated my body at 0.3. I was sitting on the wall getting my breath. I went through the channel, and I found something that made me put the screen down and look out at the water. The top players, the real ones, the names near the head of every list, were stalled. All of them. All of them. Stuck, just short of their own level 3 upgrades, and every single one for the same reason. Copper bars? The recipe wanted copper. Copper came from ore. Ore came from an island. And the only man on this ocean who had stripped an island and built an excellent grade furnace that could smelt copper at all was sitting on a black gold turtle refusing to list any. I got offers that night, serious ones. A share of everything. Partnership. Numbers that would have looked absurd a day ago. Did I sell? No, not one bar. Not to be cruel, think about what a bar of copper actually is. I picked one out of the stack by the furnace and turned it over, still warm from the smelt. It is not metal. It is a rung on a ladder that only I am standing on. I put it back and closed the lid of the chest. The moment I sell it, 4 other people have a level 3 vehicle. And then what do I have? A big turtle in a world with 4 other big turtles. The only thing I actually own out here is the gap. The silver chest paid out while I was reading. 20 E-rank crystals, 30 copper bars, 30 iron, 20 units of medium soil. I absorbed the crystals and came back up to 312 energy, and I put the bars straight into the workbench. Level 3. Quality furniture, stone buildings, actual clothing. I built the house that night with my hands in the air. Earth control, and stone flying up out of storage in a stream, and walls going together in front of me faster than I could have laid a single course by hand. 4 rooms, and est as better for the Waveries to call everyone. A bedroom with a stone bed in it. A kitchen with a real stove and a chimney that drew properly. Storeroom. And a bathroom with a drainage channel cut into the floor and a toilet at the end of it. I want to be honest about which of those mattered most. I had not washed in 4 days. I had blood on me from an E-rank wolf and a man who tried to shoot me, and salt in every seam of my clothes, and 3 days of the kind of grime that stops being dirt and starts being part of you. I pulled the plug on a tank of the fish's water and stood under it. It ran gray off me and then brown and then finally clear, and it went down the channel and out through the wall, and I stood there with my eyes shut for a long time in the first hot shower of the apocalypse. Afterwards, I went out and looked at where the outlet drained, which was straight over the side into the sea. That is 1,000 liters a day of perfectly good water going into an ocean that already has enough. I built a catch basin under it out of stone and cut a channel from the basin to the field. Every bath I took from then on watered the rice. I lay down on a stone bed that night and did the arithmetic before I slept. Tomorrow the grace period ended. 3 days, the protocol had said, and then the sea beasts stopped being scenery. No more drifting up to a sleeping monster and killing it at my leisure. From tomorrow they came at us, and they came whenever they liked. And tomorrow the rice came in. Both on the same morning. That felt about right for this world. I slept better than I had any night since it started, behind a stone wall under a roof with a door that latched. At first light, I went out with 20 units of soil and spread every last handful. 40 square meters became 80. 80 square meters of farmland on a 200 square meter animal. Well over a third of my entire floor was crops now, and I still had room to walk between the beds. Then I watered it, and I did something I had been working up to for a day. I put my hand out over the pond and pulled. A ball of water came up out of it, a full sphere, waist high, hanging in the air and turning. I walked it out over the field, held it above the middle, and burst it. It came down as mist, an even fine mist over every plant at once from the wall to the workbench. Nothing ran off, nothing pooled, nothing was wasted. How long had I been walking rows with the bucket? 2 days. And the entire time I had a water talent on my arm. That is the thing about all of this. How much of what I own am I actually using? I stood in the middle of the field with the mist still coming down and water beating on the leaves around my boots. Not most of it. The shield sat on my arm for a day before I thought to keep it up. I put a hand into the nearest bed. The soil underneath was damp all the way down evenly for the first time. The shell absorbed soil for 2 days before I tried it. Every real jump I made out here came from noticing something I already owned. Then I went to the rice. It was ready. 4 days from seed to harvest on a 5-day crop, and the stalks had gone gold and heavy and bent over with the weight of the grain, and 4 of the 10 plots were glowing. Not brightly, a low warmth coming up off them, distinctly different from the 6 beside them. I knelt down at the edge of the nearest one. Verdant hand, 30% mutation chance, 4 out of 10. On a 30% chance, in the direction I needed, first harvest. E-rank rice. The system called it that flatly, as though rice came in ranks and everybody knew. I was still crouched there when I put a hand on the trunk of the lantern wood tree to push myself up, and the gold-bordered screen opened. Contractable plant detected. I did not read the rest. I accepted before it could reconsider. Gold light ran up the trunk and out along every branch, and the whole tree lit like something being switched on, and then the bond settled into place beside base chuns and the fishes, slower than either, patient, more like a room than an animal. Verdant field. Verdant field. Every crop within 10 meters of the tree grew 50% faster. I did the stack standing there with my hands still on the bark. Verdant hand doubled it, 100%. I looked down at the bed by my boot. Dark soil, stripped off an island 2 days ago. Medium soil added 20 on top of that. And the tree, standing over all of it, throwing its light across the whole field. 50 more. A 5-day crop in under 2. I moved the tree that afternoon so its 10-meter radius covered as much of the 80 square meters as it possibly could, and then I stood back and watched the shoots on the newest bed visibly straighten over the course of an hour. The tree paid me for the contract immediately. 10 fruit dropped all at once into the grass at the base, and these were not the red ones from the island. Bigger, brighter. The description called them lantern fruit and said the tree would drop another batch every 3 days, forever. I ate one to see. Nothing, not a flicker. Every attribute I had was over 30, and the fruit had nothing to give me. I stood there chewing with the taste of it in my mouth and thought about who it was worth something to. Somebody at 3, somebody at 2. Somebody who had been eating raw fish for 4 days on a raft with no wall, who was about to find out what the end of the grace period meant. For them, this was not fruit. It was a step up a ladder they could not otherwise climb. I listed 5 on the open board at 10 E-rank crystals each. Then I sat down to see how long they would last. Clementine bought the first one. Course she did. She was always first. I had started to be able to predict it. Whatever I put up, whatever the hour, her name came in at the top of the list within about 4 seconds. Then she did something I had not paid her for. She ate it and posted her numbers in open chat. Constitution 31.6. Half a point. Permanent. From 1 fruit. The remaining 4 sold in about 15 seconds. After that, the messages started, and they were not offers so much as pleading. People were offering double, triple. One man offered me his entire inventory, itemized, for a single fruit and apologized for how little it was. I did not have any. That was the honest answer, and nobody believed it. The tree fruited every 3 days. There were 10. 5 had gone to the board, and I was keeping 5 back, and the whole ocean was now bidding on a supply that physically did not exist yet. Clementine had done in one post what I could not have bought with 100 crystals. Why did she do it? I never asked her. I think she was just pleased and wanted to tell someone. That is worth remembering. The most valuable thing that happened to my business all week was a stranger being enthusiastic in public for free. I went looking for a mill after that, mostly out of habit, and I found one in about 2 minutes. A man was dumping a stone mill blueprint at the bottom of the board for 5 bottles of water. His note said it was useless. A mill grinds grain, and there is no grain in the ocean, and he wanted it out of his inventory. He was right about everything except the last part. I bought it instantly. 5 bottles of water from a fish that made 1,000 liters a day. It cost me nothing. I was the last piece of a pipeline that ran from seed to soil to sickle to flower to a plate, and I got it for the price of a coffee because the man selling it lived in a world with no farms in it. Then the water market fell over. It had been at 4 crystals a bottle and climbing for 3 days. But I had been selling steadily and cheaply the whole time, and enough people had drunk enough water that the panic went out of it, and the price started sliding. The scalpers tried to hold the line. I did the opposite. I cut my price in half, a full liter, not a bottle, for 1 crystal. Regular players lost their minds. Somebody worked out that a day's water now costs less than a piece of grilled meat and posted the maths. The scalper's entire margin evaporated in an afternoon. Was that deliberate? Entirely. I did not need the crystals. I had a fish making 1,000 liters a day and a queue for grilled meat that never cleared. They needed the margin. That was the whole of it. You do not beat a cartel by joining it. You beat it by making the thing free. They did not take it well. My inbox filled up. Change the price back. You are ruining it for everyone. We have numbers. We know roughly where you are. Do not make us come and find you. 20, 30 messages, escalating. I read them all, and I replied to exactly one, with one word. Come. Then I sent a second message, because I was in a mood asking them to please try, because I had been on this ocean 4 days and nobody had shown me anything yet. The inbox went quiet and stayed quiet. The harvest was that afternoon. I took the sickle down the 6 normal plots first and got white rice, ordinary and clean, more of it than I expected. Then I went into the 4 that glowed. The grain came off dark red, deep red, almost black in the shade and faintly pulsing, a slow rhythm through the whole handful like something with a heartbeat. Crimson rice, E rank, constitution and strength. I ran it through the mill and it came out white, veined through with red like marble. And then I went into my own kitchen, on a stove with a chimney, and I cooked rice. I want to explain what that was like. I had eaten crackers, raw fish, cold canned pork, and, as a treat, meat burned over an open rack for 4 days. I was every meal I had eaten since the world ended. I put rice in a pot, I plated it, I laid E-rank grilled meat over the top and chopped the wild onions I had pulled off the island and scattered them. Then I sat down at a stone table in a stone house on a black gold turtle and ate a proper meal with seasoning on it. I am not going to pretend about this. I got about 4 mouthfuls in and had to stop for a second. 4 days. It takes 4 days. Afterwards, I listed the crimson rice at 10 crystals a serving alongside the lantern fruit and what was left of the healing fruit. Every listing was gone in seconds. Clementine was first on every single one. The scalpers made one more mistake before they went quiet for good. They tried to tell people I was bluffing, that the stock was fake, that the numbers were staged, that nobody sells 1,000 liters a day because nobody has 1,000 liters a day. The problem with that argument is that my transaction log is public. It scrolled past in the channel while they were still typing. Sale, 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 for a second, hour after hour, every one of them real and every one of them time-stamped. What does a rumor do against a receipt? Nothing. It just sits there looking stupid. Their credibility went and did not come back, and by evening the crystals were coming in faster than I could absorb them. My reserves swelled back past everything I had spent on the level 3 upgrade, and then I sat down and worked out what was actually wrong with my operation, because something was. Two things. The first was seeds. System seeds do not reproduce. You plant them, you harvest, and you get grain, food, not seed. Every single crop I grew, I had to buy the seed for again. My farm was not self-sustaining. Taig! It was a subscription. The second was worse. Half of my 80 square meters was sitting empty. Not because I lacked soil, because I lacked hours. I was cooking, smelting, listing, harvesting, watering, fighting, and sleeping about 5 hours a night, and there was simply no more of me to spread across it. What do you call a farm that cannot be farmed? A waste. That is what half my field was. I needed employees. That was the answer, and I knew it was the answer, and there was nowhere on an empty ocean to hire anybody. I filed it the way I had filed copper. It came back later, and it mattered. Then the system did something it had not done before. Treasure chest event. Chests started spawning. Not one, not a scatter, everywhere, across the whole map at once, and the contents were not food or crystals. Defense blueprints, arrow towers, ship spikes, hull armor. There was nothing subtle about it. The protocol had given us 3 days of grace, and now it was handing out walls, which tells you exactly what it thought was coming next. I climbed up onto Base Chun's head and looked out. The ocean was sparkling. Points of light all the way to the horizon in every direction, hundreds of them, bobbing on the swell. Go, I said. We went. Night came down while we were still collecting, and the lantern wood lit up. I had not thought that through. A tree that glows on a black gold platform in the middle of a dark ocean. From below, we were the only light in the world. The eyes came up out of the deep to look at it. Dozens first, then hundreds, spreading out under us in a slow ring, pale and round and rising. The grace period was over. These ones could hit back now. Was I worried? I checked. I genuinely checked, standing there watching several hundred monsters converge on my house. I was not. That was exactly what I had wanted. I had been hunting them one at a time for 4 days. Now they were queuing. I went up onto Base Chun's head with cutwater in one hand and a chunk of the deck in the other, and I did not come down for an hour. The F-ranks died in one hit, not a fight. A gesture, and the water opened, and something came apart under the surface. I would cut left, throw right, cut left again, and Base Chun would go through the middle of a knot of them like a boulder rolling downhill, headbutting one into pieces and biting another in half without slowing. 200 square meters of animal moving at speed does not need technique. Then the bigger eyes arrived. Brighter, further down, moving differently. E-Rank had come to see what the light was. I killed the first one with a single cutwater. One. An E-rank Stone Wolf Sovereign had cost me a spear, a broken charge, and 5 passes with a shield 2 days ago. This thing came up out of the dark at me, and I cut it in half on the way past and turned to look for the next one. An E-rank crystal, 60 pounds of premium meat. They were not threats anymore, they were deliveries. After an hour, I stopped and opened what we had collected. 5 black iron chests, 2 bronze crystals, meat, materials, and the defense buildings the event had been handing out. An arrow tower, a set of ship spikes, a plate of hull armor. I laid them out on the deck and looked at them, and the good mood went out of me. An arrow tower covers a radius. Spikes cover a length of wall. Armor covers a patch of hull. I paced it out. Everything I had pulled from 7 chests covered maybe 5% of my perimeter. 5%. Here's the thing nobody tells you about getting bigger. A 50 square meter platform has a short wall. A 200 square meter platform has a wall 4 times as long, and every meter of it is a place something can come over. I had spent 4 days making Base Chun enormous, and I had just worked out that he might now be too big to defend. I paced the wall again in the dark. 200 meters of stone, 8 small guns. 1 tower here, a gap, another tower. Gaps everywhere, wide ones. Something was going to find them. The morning after the grace period ended, I found out what my fruit had actually been for. The people who had bought lantern fruit the day before were alive. They posted about it, attacked in the night, hurt, ate the fruit, healed, still here. The people who had not were quieter. Some of them were quiet permanently. By mid-morning, I had offers of 50 crystals for a single fruit. 50. from players who had called 10 an insult 2 days earlier, and I had none. The tree fruits every 3 days. My shelves were empty and would stay empty until it decided otherwise. So, what do you do with the shortage you cannot fill? You can price it. That is the obvious move. Let the number go where the panic takes it. Sell the next batch at 50, at 80, at whatever they will bear. I did not do that. I held the price exactly where it was. And then I went further, and I dumped wood and plastic onto the board, cheap, far under market for the players who still had not upgraded a raft. I want to be clear that this was not kindness. I ran the numbers on it that morning while I was eating. A dead player buys nothing. Every person who drowns in the night is a customer who never comes back, and my entire operation runs on there being 100,000 people out there with crystals in their pockets and a reason to spend them. Charging 50 crystals for a fruit makes me rich this week. Keeping 4,000 people alive makes me rich for a year. Which of those do I want? You can us. It was not a close question. I sold cheap and I slept fine. Does that make it selfish? Probably. I am not going to dress it up. But a man who is generous only when it costs him nothing is not generous. He is comfortable. I would rather be right about the arithmetic and honest about the reason. We found the silver chest a little after 9. It was riding the surface a few hundred meters out, glowing, bigger than the black iron ones and a different color entirely. And something was standing over it. Standing on the water. It was upright and it was taller than me by a head. Gray-blue scaled skin. A harness of rusty orange scale armor across the chest and shoulders, a long trident corroded green along the tines held in one webbed and clawed hand. The face was a fish's face, bulging round eyes, no expression a person could read, and a jaw that did not close over the teeth in it. D rank, reef-born warden, intelligent, weapon proficient. D rank. I had killed my first E rank 2 days ago and thought it was the top of the world. And that word, intelligent. Nothing I had fought had carried that. I stopped base tune at 20 meters and did not close. That is the part I am proudest of, if I am honest. 4 days earlier I would have charged. 2 days earlier I did charge, at a wolf, and lost my spear for it. I sat there instead and looked at it, and it looked back at me. And I could see it thinking. Not the blank drift of a gorefin. Not a wolf's straight-line hunger. This thing was doing arithmetic. Its eyes went over base tune, the size of him, the wall, the towers, and then over the house and the field and the fruit tree, and came back to me. I read 3 things in that face. Caution, because it could see what I was standing on. Threat, because it had a weapon and knew how to use it. And greed, because it had just added up everything I owned. It wanted the turtle. Then it pointed the trident at me and came. It ran, crossed the surface of the ocean, upright, at a speed that closed 20 meters in almost no time at all. I went off base Chun's back to meet it. I jumped off my own platform into open water and froze the sea under my feet as I landed. It went hard in a disc around my boots, pale blue and cracking at the edges, spray locked in mid-arc where it had been thrown. I got my footing on it and ran. We hit in the middle. Trident against shield, my blade against its guard, and the shock threw us both backwards several meters across the ice. I skidded, caught myself, and took stock while I was still recovering. Its stats were somewhere around 20. Could feel it in the impact. The weight behind that trident was more than anything I had faced. 20 would demolish any normal player on this ocean. 20 would go through a level 2 raft and everyone standing on it without slowing. And we're all above 30. So I could end it. I was fairly sure I could end it in one exchange if I committed. I decided not to. When do you get to fight something that fights back? Not often. Everything I had killed for 2 days had died in one hit, and that had taught me nothing at all. This thing had a weapon and a brain, and it was still a tier below me. I dragged it out on purpose. I blocked the trident on the shield and felt how it loaded. I countered with cutwater and watched what it did about that. I threw earth chunks in from angles it could not see and learned exactly how fast its head came round. 15 minutes in, I stopped thinking about the moves. I faked left with a cutwater. The trident came up to block a thing that was not coming. I put an earth block into its ribs from the blind side, and while it was folding, I stepped in and punched it square in the chest. It left the ice entirely and went backward across the water. By the end of it, I was not thinking at all. That is the only way I can describe what 15 minutes of that fight did. At the start, I was choosing. Block now, cut now, throw now. By the end, there was no gap between seeing and doing. Shield came up because the trident was coming. Blade went out because the guard had dropped. Earth came in from the side because the head had turned. I've never been good at anything physical in my life. I was good at that, out there on a plate of ice I had made myself. I finished it with the fake. Cut water, telegraphed badly on purpose. The trident came up high to block it, and while both its arms were committed above its head, I pulled a boulder off the frozen deck and put it through the side of its skull. It went down and it did not get up. 11 o'clock exactly, I know because the sky told me. First D rank sea beast kill, Rowan Vale. The fifth time. Fifth server-wide announcement in 5 days, and the channel went off like a bomb. There had been a book running on me apparently. Somebody had been taking bets on whether I would hit a wall. A lot of people had bet that I would, and they paid up in public, and a few of them were decent enough to be funny about it. I stood on the ice and let the ache come up through my arms. I was tired, actually tired. I sat down on the ice. I put my hands on my knees. Water ran off the edges of the platform. It had started to go. When was the last time I earned that? Day one, maybe. I flexed my right hand open and shut. The knuckles had split somewhere in the last 5 minutes and I had not noticed. That was the real prize, not the crystal, not the meat. Something had finally been hard. Then I collected. One crystal, deep purple, heavier in the hand than anything I had absorbed. D rank. 100 pounds of D rank meat, which at my going rate was a small fortune on its own. And the trident. I picked it up and turned it over. Corroded, ugly, unbalanced for a human grip until I shifted my hands. Proper D-rank weapon. I had killed everything since day 2 with a stick I built out of 10 wood on the first afternoon. I carried it back to the shell and set it against the cabin wall and did not throw it away, and I have not thrown it away since. The kill paid out something else too. A talent upgrade stone. I did not have to think about where that went. Verdant hand. Level 1, level 2. The stone went out of my hand, like water into sand. Same as every crystal ever had. Growth speed came up from 100% to 120. I walked over to the field while it settled and put my hand flat on the nearest bed. Mutation chance from 30% to 40. 40. Nearly half of everything I planted would now come up as something nobody else in the world could grow. Then I opened the silver chest, and it was the best one yet. A blueprint for a D-rank energy attack tower. 20-meter range, auto-targeting, powered by crystals. It would fight while I slept. 5 contract scrolls. The description said they bound a creature to permanent loyalty. I read that line twice and put the scroll somewhere safe. 5 of them. I had 3 contracts already, and every one of them had changed my life. A turtle, a fish, a tree. 5 more, and something was starting to take shape in my head about the empty half of my farm and the fact that I could not hire anybody. 5 D-rank crystals, 20 iron plates. Then I did the thing I had been avoiding since the night before and counted my defenses properly. 8 small buildings. That was everything I had, across 200 square meters. I walked the whole perimeter and looked at it honestly, and it was thin. Genuinely thin. A determined push at the right stretch of wall and something would be inside, among the crops, at the house. But then, walking back, I thought about what everyone else had. An ordinary player on this ocean was standing on a level 2 boat, 30 square meters, if they had done well. No wall or a rail, nothing that shoots. Guys. And from last night, monsters that come whenever they like. Then for me was a fortress for them. Did that make me safe? No. It made me lucky. I walked the north stretch again and put my hand flat on the stone, cold and thinner than I wanted under my palm. A wall is only thin compared to what is coming. Out past the rail, the water was already going dark. Something rolled once, well out, and did not surface again. It just told me what the next few nights were going to do to the population. So I spent the afternoon building. The D-rank energy tower went at the center, where its 20 meters covered the house, the pond, and most of the field. It came up as a column of dark stone with an aqua core turning inside it, and when I fed it, crystals the core lit and the whole thing hummed. 4 F-rank arrow towers went along the stone wall, spaced to overlap, and 2 E-rank ballistic cannons, fore and aft, one facing the way we were going, one facing the way we had come. I stood at the front rampart when it was done, with a D-rank trident in my hand and a tower humming behind me. 5 days ago, the raft came apart under my knees. I loaded every building I owned with crystals and stepped back to look at it. The energy tower's core lit aqua and started turning. The arrow towers came up on their mounts. The ballistas racked and settled. 200 square meters of black gold shell with a house and a farm on it and guns on every side. Not a base, a weapons platform, and it was swimming. Then I read the upkeep and stopped enjoying myself. They drain, not when they fire, all the time just to stay powered. The energy tower alone ate 5 crystals a day, sitting there doing nothing. Everything on this ocean costs rent. The turtle eats. The fish eats. Now the walls eat too. What happens to a man who stops earning out here? He does not coast. He goes backwards immediately, and everything he built starts switching itself off. That is the part nobody in chat had worked out. They thought I had won. I had not won. I had built something with a very large appetite, and I was the only thing feeding it. At midnight, the sky went white for everybody. Newbie phase complete. No more protection. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again. Sea beast raids were permanent from that moment. And underneath it, a second window opened that had never existed before. A leaderboard. Global. Every player on the ocean. Ranked. I was first. Level 3 vehicle. A point total roughly half again clear of second place. And second place was not nobody. It was a name I had seen in chat every day. A real crew. A real boat. 4 days of hard work behind him. I went down the list looking for names I knew. 10th. Level 2. Clem and Teen. I sat with that for a second. 10th on the entire ocean. The woman who bought half a piece of meat off me for 10 crystals as a joke and then advertised my fruit for free was in the global top 10, and I had been treating her as a friendly customer. Then the ocean lit up. More eyes than any night before. Not hundreds now, thousands, spread out under and around us in a field that went past where I could see. And they did not drift. That was the difference. Every night before, they had hung there, half asleep, waiting to be killed. Tonight they came up. 200 meters off, I watched a wooden raft come apart. I could see it happening and I could do nothing about it. Something took the corner of it and the whole structure folded and the man on it went into the water and did not come back up. Chat was not chat anymore. It was screaming and then names and then people asking for coordinates that did not exist yet. In the first hour, 6,000 people died. The village counter had been sitting a shade under 99,000 at midnight. By 1 in the morning, it read 91,222. 6,000 people in 60 minutes, more than the entire 3-day grace period had taken. 15 monster fish came at us at about 12:30. They came in a line, fast, straight at the front rampart, and I put my hand on the wall and did not raise it. The energy tower fired. A purple beam went out over the wall, and the lead fish simply stopped existing, not thrown, not wounded, gone from the middle outward. The arrow towers picked up the flanks. The forward ballista put a bolt through something the size of a car and pinned what was left of it under the surface. 15 seconds, maybe less. The survivors turned and ran. I had not lifted a finger. I had stood at my own wall with my hands behind my back and watched my house defend itself while 200 meters away a man drowned because he did not have one. I did not feel good about that. I want to put that down somewhere. Could I have saved him? Honestly, no. He was 200 meters out in a raid with thousands of beasts in the water between us. Bastion is fast, but he is not that fast, and I would have arrived to find nothing. Could I have saved him 3 days ago by selling cheaper? That one I am less sure about. That one still sits with me. But I also knew exactly what I was going to do about it, and it was not going to be crying in the channel. I opened the board and posted. Buying all seed types. Special varieties. Welcome. Paying well. Because here is what the raid had actually shown me. Half my field was empty. Seeds did not reproduce, so I had to buy them, and the only seeds I had were rice and whatever the chests handed me. And out there tonight, 91,000 people had just learned that being alive costs stat points, and stat points come from food, and I am the only man in the world who can grow it. Every seed on this ocean was worth more in my soil than in theirs. They knew it too. That is why the messages started inside a minute. Wheat, chili, green vegetables, basic things, farm things, seeds people had picked up in chests and thrown in a bag because you cannot plant anything on a boat. They came in faster than I could read them, and I bought every single one. Clementine's message came in at about 2 in the morning. She had seeds. Of course she had seeds. Then she dumped her whole inventory into the window without being asked, the way she did everything, and I read it and sat forward. F rank sun wheat, fine, ordinary. F rank green vegetables, also fine. E rank ember chili. That is a stat crop and E rank, and nobody had listed one all week. D rank meat mushrooms. I read that last line about 4 times. D rank meat mushrooms. A mushroom that grows meat. Do you understand what that is worth to me specifically? Bastian eats 500 pounds of meat a day. That is the single largest running cost I have, and every pound of it comes out of the water, which means hunting, which means hours, which means the thing that limits my entire operation. A crop that grows meat turns my biggest expense into farmland. I stopped hunting for a living the day those went in the ground. Not immediately, but that was the moment it became inevitable. And then the other question arrived, the one I should have asked days earlier. How does a level 2 player have D rank seeds on day 3? I had been ranked first in the world for about 2 hours. I had a stripped island, an excellent grade furnace, 3 contracts, and a D rank kill, and I did not have a single D rank seed. She was 10th, on a boat, with no farm. I screenshotted her entire list and sent it back and told her I wanted all of it. Everything. One trade. I offered 20 pieces of D rank grilled meat. She called me a robber. In those words, then she accepted 3 seconds later. I attached a condition to the trade before it closed, and it was not about goods. I asked her why her luck was insane. She could have refused. She sent me a screenshot of her player panel instead, immediately, with the trust of somebody who had decided days ago that I was not going to hurt her. There was an S-rank talent on it. Fortune's Grace. Higher quality items out of every chest she opened. Rare drops off everything she killed. I sat back and put the pieces together, and they went together very fast. The D rank seeds on day 3, not skill, chests, the endless crystal she paid me with when she was ranked nowhere, the fact that she was first on every single listing I ever posted at every hour, which I had put down to her being permanently online. She was not lucky. She was S rank at being lucky, which is a different thing entirely. I had spent 4 days thinking of her as my best customer. A friendly voice, a bit of free advertising. She was a top 10 player with a talent as good as mine, running a completely different strategy, and I had never once looked at her properly. I wrote a rule down that night, and I have not broken it since. Never assume you are the only one with a gift. Everyone out here got dealt something, all 10 billion of us. So who else have I been underestimating? Mar-Eek Eileys, probably. Saltwick, certainly. The ones who look harmless are the ones who worked out how to use theirs quietly. Then I went and planted for 3 hours. 80 square meters. Every seed I had bought that night, every variety, laid out in blocks with paths between them. I gave the good ones the prime ground. Ember chili and meat mushrooms went in close to the lantern wood, inside the 10-meter radius where verdant fields 50% stacked with everything else. The sunweed and greens went out toward the wall where the bonus thinned. By 2 in the morning, the whole field was planted and misted, and I stood at the edge of it with my arms aching. Not 1 square meter of that turtle was idle anymore. Morning brought a system change, and it was the biggest one since the leaderboard. Everyone's personal information updated, and there was a new line on it, on mine and on everybody's. Map coordinates. I looked at that for a long time before I understood what had actually happened. For 5 days, this ocean had been 10 billion people alone in the dark. You could not find anyone. You could talk to them, trade with them, sell to them, and never in your life meet them because there was no way to say where you were. That was over. People could find each other now. Friends could meet up, crews could form. Trade could happen face to face instead of through a board. And anyone who wanted to come and take what you had could now find out exactly where you were floating. I thought about the scalpers I had told to come, back when coming was impossible. Then I thought about a man on an island 4 days ago who had shot me in the back for a turtle when the only way he had found me was by accident. The water broadcast went out mid-morning. First player organization founded. Cirrus Court, Mar-Eek Eileys. Ranked third. Ranked third! He had been climbing steadily all week, and I had watched him do it without ever speaking to him. He did not message me privately. He did it in the open, in front of the whole ocean, which told me most of what I needed to know about him. He offered me the vice leader seat of Cirrus Court. It was a generous offer, and it was also a trap, and I do not think he meant it as one. Second chair in someone else's house. My copper, my food, my water, my turtle, feeding an organization with his name on the door. What does a faction give me that I do not have? Protection I do not need. Numbers I cannot feed. A vote in decisions I would rather make alone. I did not answer him that day. I did something else instead. I walked out to the front rampart and looked down the length of 200 square meters. The house, the field, the pond, the tree, the towers, the wall, and I named it Bass Chun Hold. Not the turtle. The turtle was Base Chun. This was the place on his back. It was a slightly ridiculous thing to do. I did it anyway, out loud, alone. Why does a name matter? It should not. It changes nothing about the wall or the guns. It changed something about me. A base is a thing you hold until you lose it. A hold is a thing you keep. And one day, if I kept going, it was going to be an actual city. The energy tower fired while I was standing there and blew something off the shell edge behind me. I turned around and looked out at the water, and the good feeling went out of me. There were more eyes than at midnight, many more, and there were big ones among them now. Deep, bright, slower, moving up through the field of smaller ones and not stopping. E-rank, attacking, not drifting, not curious, coming. 2 nights ago. E-ranks had been a rare prize I hunted deliberately. Now they were in the raid. The beasts were leveling too. The whole ocean was climbing, and it had never occurred to me that the monsters were on the same curve I was. The counter told the rest of it. 90,813, hundreds an hour, all day, every hour. Channel had stopped being a marketplace and turned into a wall of people asking for help from anyone who had a wall. I sold what I could, and I could not sell walls. Then, in the middle of all that, my whole field came in at once. Watermelons, tomatoes, and potatoes, all planted the same night, all matured together under 170% growth. I walked the rows with a basket, and I could see the mutations from 10 meters away. Roughly half, not 4 in 10, nearly 5, because the talent upgrade had pushed mutation chance to 40%, and the soil and the tree were doing the rest. The final tally took me an hour to sort. 20 E-rank crimson-veined watermelons, dark red under the rind, heavy as stones. 30 shock-burst tomatoes, so tight and overswollen they looked ready to split in your hand. 20 tremor potatoes, knuckled and dense and much heavier than a potato has any business being. 70 mutant crops. 70 stat-boosting items that no other human being on this ocean could produce, in one morning off 80 square meters of dirt on an animal. And then, in the corner of the last bed, I found something that was not on the list. It was a melon, and it was gold. Not yellow, gold. The rind veined through with metal-bright lines that caught the sun, sitting there among ordinary green ones like somebody had left a piece of treasure in the vegetable patch. D-rank, sun-veined melon. I crouched down next to it and did not pick it for a minute, 'cause this was new information, and it was better than the 70 behind me. Verdant Hand Level 1 had given me E-rank mutations. Level 2 had raised the rate. I knew that, 40% instead of 30, it said so on the talent. It had not said anything about quality. But there was a D-rank crop in my field, and I had never planted a D-rank seed in that bed. The upgrade had not just made mutations more common, it had made them better, which meant every level of that talent from here was going to push the ceiling up as well as the floor, and I was 3 days into a farm that had already outgrown the world twice. I listed all 70 at 10 crystals each, and I did not offer a single discount. No bulk rate, no favors. 10 crystals, take it or leave it. They took it. The first buyers ate theirs and posted their numbers inside 2 minutes, the way Clementine had taught the whole ocean to do, and after that, it was not a market anymore. It was a stampede. 10 minutes. 70 mutant crops gone in 10 minutes. Crystals came in faster than the window could list them, and I absorbed them as they arrived, straight into energy, because there was no point letting them sit. Then I did something the Barbecue King would not have done. I listed the ordinary crops too. The plain watermelons, the plain tomatoes, the plain potatoes, no mutation, no stat gain, just food. 2 crystals each. They vanished instantly, all of it. That is when I understood what I actually was now. I had spent 4 days as a man who sold grilled meat. That is a specialty. It is a good specialty, and it made me rich, but it is one product. What is a person on this ocean actually short of? Not meat, everything. Water, vegetables, fruit, grain, salt, seasoning. Every ordinary thing that a person eats without thinking about it, and none of it exists on a boat. I was not the Barbecue King anymore. I was the only supermarket in the world. How long does a monopoly like that hold? Not forever. Somebody would find an island. Somebody would roll a farming talent. They would still need soil and a floor that does not sink and water. I had a 4-day head start on all 3. Clementine messaged while I was still absorbing. She wanted watermelon. And she was not offering crystals. She was offering a plant. Bramble coil. It grew around a vessel, she said. Anything from the sea that touched it got hurt. A defensive crop. A wall that grows itself and fights back. For a man who had spent 2 days worrying that his wall was 4 times longer than his guns could cover. The problem was that I was out of E-rank watermelon. Sold out inside 10 minutes with the rest. So I offered her the gold one. My D-rank sun-veined melon. The only one in existence. The thing I had been crouching over in the vegetable patch that morning, working out what it meant. She paid 10 E-rank crystals and the bramble coil, which was, I want to be honest, considerably less than I could have got for it if I had put it on the open board and let the whole ocean bid. Why undercharge my best customer? Because she is my best customer, and she is also my best supplier, and she has an S-rank luck talent that fills her chests with things I cannot grow. Squeeze her once and I win one trade. Look after her and I get her whole inventory for the next month. I planted the bramble coil at the shell's edge and misted it. It sprouted while I was still standing over it. Not fast like the rice, instant. It came up out of the soil, found the stone, and started climbing. Within a minute, it had a grip on the wall. Within 10, it was running along the top of it in both directions, dark green and woody, thorns standing out along every stem like living barbed wire. Then the gold-bordered screen opened, and I actually laughed. Contractable plant detected. Twice now. The tree and this. I confirmed it without hesitating, because the lantern wood had taught me exactly what a plant contract was worth. Everyone else in this world was out there trying to tame animals. Nobody was taming agriculture. There was an entire branch of this system that the whole ocean had walked straight past because it did not look like power. The bond settled in, slow, patient, a little hostile, exactly like the plant. I had 1,847 energy points by then. 5 days of everything, banked. I spent 60 on the vine. It went off like something detonating in slow motion. The whole length of it thickened and doubled and threw out runners in both directions until it had wrapped the entire 200-meter perimeter, over the ramparts, down the outside of the wall, into the water. And it flowered. Buds came out along the top of it, fist-sized, dark and tight. I was leaning in to look at one when it fired. A seed went past my ear at a speed I did not properly see and hit the ocean 10 meters out with a crack. I stood back up slowly. My wall was now a hedge that shot things. Contract paid me the way the others had, and this one was the strangest yet. Wood attribute control. I did not know what to do with it at first. I stood in the field and put my hand out at a tomato plant that had gone over sideways under its own weight and thought about it standing up. It stood up. Not fast. It straightened over about 2 seconds, the stem thickening where it had bent and settled. Then I looked at a ripe tomato 3 rows away and thought about holding it. It came off the vine and crossed the gap and landed in my palm. I stood there in the middle of 80 square meters of crops and understood that I had just stopped needing to walk my own field. Water to irrigate, earth to till, and now wood to harvest without touching anything. There was no part of farming left that required my hands. So what was I, at that point? Not a farmer. A farmer works. I stood in the middle of 80 square meters and moved a crop with a thought, and the honest word for that is something closer to weather. I took the other half of my gold melon. I had cut it in 2 and sold Clementine 1/2 and kept the rest, and I sat down under the lantern wood tree and ate it. Constitution, +01, 1/10 of a point. For anyone else that would be nothing. For me, it was the first stat gain I had got out of food in 3 days because everything else I grew stopped working somewhere north of 30 and this did not. That is what D-rank crops meant. The ceiling had moved. I was still sitting there when the private message came in. It was from a name I did not recognize, and it was one line: "Watch out for Saltwake." I typed back asking what that meant, and the little marker went gray. Tireless, offline. He did not come back that day or any day after, and I never found out who he was or why he warned me, so I did it myself. Saltwake's public activity was all there because most people never think to hide it. He was second on the Ingot Isle trade rankings. He had been busy, very busy, and about a day and a half ago he had stopped trading and started recruiting. He had founded a gang, the Undertow. There was a manifesto, an actual written manifesto, posted publicly, and the substance of it was that the ocean was about to sort itself into people with good gear and people without, and the Undertow intended to be the ones taking rather than the ones losing. Targets by preference, players with equipment worth the trouble. Then I found the screenshot. Somebody in his own crew had leaked it, which is what always happens. It was Saltwick giving an order to one of his people. Track Rowan Vale's movements. Find where he sits. Hit him before he forms a faction of his own. There was a line under it about how nobody gets to first place in 5 days without a special talent, and whatever mine was, it was worth taking off me. I read the whole thing twice, and then I sat back and laughed. I am not proud of the laughing, but I want to put down what I was actually looking at while I did it. 32 Constitution, 31 Speed, 32 Strength, Transcendent Mid-Rank, a tier the system had not bothered to name for anyone else. A 200 square meter battle turtle wrapped in a thorn vine that shoots seeds at 10 meters. A D-rank energy cannon that deletes things. 2 ballistas, 4 arrow towers, a stone wall, water blades, earth control, plant manipulation. A water shield I had stopped taking off. A D-rank trident I had pulled off the last intelligent thing that decided it wanted my turtle. And Saltwick, who had sold me 10 iron bars for half a bottle of water each and thought he had robbed me, was somewhere out there organizing a boarding party. Did I warn him? No. Did I post it publicly, denounce him, rally the ocean against the undertow? No. I saved the screenshot, closed the window, and said nothing at all. Because a man who thinks he is about to surprise you is much easier to deal with than a man who knows he cannot. Then I went up onto the front rampart to check the horizon, the way I did every few hours now. And there was land on it, not the gray knuckle of rock I had stripped 4 days ago. This was long, went along the skyline much further than the first one had, flat and dark and green at the top, 2 or 3 times the size, maybe more. I put my hand on the wall and felt for the bond. I ran through what was coming with me. 32 stats, a trident, a thorn wall, 2 ballistas, 4 towers, 1 cannon, a fish, a tree, a turtle. It was going to be enough. Base Chun, I said, full speed. It was bigger than I thought from the water. 3 times the first island, easily and flat, none of the steep gray shoulders the other one had. Long beaches, deep soil under the tree line. I could feel it from 200 meters out, going down further than my sense could follow. And it was occupied. Wolves in the tree line, the same low gray-brown F-ranks I had killed on day 3. Something long and silver cutting back and forth in the shallows, fast with a fin like a blade. E-rank razorfish, a dozen of them at least. And on the beach itself, 2 shapes I took for boulders until one of them moved. D-rank, rock giant, lounging. 3 meters of gray stone bodies sprawled on the sand in the sun like men outside a pub. 2 of them, D-rank, the same tier as the reefborn that had given me the best 15 minutes of my life. Did that worry me? It should have. 2 days ago it would have. I left Base June in the shallows with instructions to strip the beach, sand, soil, everything mineral he could reach, and I went over the wall. I froze the water under my boots as I landed and ran ashore on my own ice. They came at me before I made the tree line, all of it at once, and I did not slow down for any of it. The first wolf got the trident through the neck at a full run. I did not stop moving. Cutwater took the second one out of the air mid-leap, and a chunk of the beach took the third in the ribs and folded it around the rock. The razorfish came up into the shallows behind me, and I turned and opened the water, and 4 of them came apart in it. Then the giants stood up. They came in slow, and they hit like buildings, and the first swing went over my head because I was already under it. I put the trident up through the eye and dropped it where it stood. The second one got a hand on my shield, and I felt that all the way to my shoulder. Then I stepped inside its reach and cut its throat, and 3 tons of rock came down on the sand and stopped being anything. 15 kills, maybe more. I lost count in the shallows. But how long would that have taken me on day 3? All afternoon. And I would have lost the spear doing it. It took 4 minutes. It took 4 minutes. I stood on that beach in the sun with a D-rank trident in my hand and crystals scattered around me and meat piled up where things had fallen, and I was not even breathing hard. 5 days. I was halfway through looting the second giant when Base Chun screamed into my head. Not a sound. It came up the bond as a single flat shove of alarm, a thing I had never had from him, not once, not when the reef beast bit down on his face, not through any raid. Intruders, intruders. I dropped everything and ran. I went off the sand and onto the water and froze it under every stride, and I could see them before I was halfway back. 3 sailboats. Level 2s, good ones, tied up alongside my turtle like he was a dock. Man on my wall. 3 of them were already over the stone and climbing, hands on the ramparts, hauling themselves up onto my deck, past the arrow towers, past the ballista, into the field where my crops were. They never touched the deck. The bramble coil took them at the ankles. It came off the wall in one motion, 3 separate runners moving at once, and it had them before the first man's boot came down. USP hour. It whipped up their legs, cinched, and drove every thorn it had into them at the same instant, and then it lifted them clean off the stone and held them upside down over my wall, screaming. The rest of the crew stopped dead on their boats. I came up over the rampart and landed on the wall between 2 flowering buds and looked down at them. Who invited you? The leader was on the middle boat. I watched him take it in. The turtle he had thought was an island. The wall he had thought was a reef. The tree. The towers. The vine holding 3 of his men in the air, and me standing on top of it with a trident. He worked out what he was looking at. I saw the exact moment. Own vehicle, not terrain. Somebody's home, and somebody was standing right there. The vine tossed all 3 of them back over the wall. They hit the water between the boats and came up thrashing, and their crew hauled them in over the gunwales. That was the off-ramp. I gave it to them deliberately. 3 men bleeding, nobody dead, boats intact, open water behind them and nothing in the way. Why let them go at all? Because I did not want the undertow to have a story about me killing their crew. A man who throws you back is a man you avoid. A man who kills you is a man your friends come for. Any sane person leaves. He raised the crossbow instead. He put a bolt at my face from 8 meters, and I moved my head and felt it go past my ear, and then I opened his shoulder to the bone with a cut water before his arms had come down. He went back into the mast, screaming. The other 2 came over the rail at once. The one on the left had a boarding axe already swinging. The second went wide behind him, toward the gap where the vine had not yet closed. I turned to meet the axe, and that was when I saw the 4th boat coming in fast on the blind side with